Coming up in this video, I'm going to show you a quick and easy way of painting horses for war games. Hey everyone, welcome back to Mini Junkie. My name is Jarrett. Caveat, I said quick and easy in the beginning intro, and it's only if you have an airbrush. Sorry, if you are looking to get into airbrushing, I just published a video that helps you understand the process of using an airbrush for painting miniatures, so check that out. But really quick and easy in my jargon almost always is going to be accompanied by some airbrush work. But the good news is if you have an airbrush or you're going to get into airbrushing and you have a lot of horses to paint, the airbrush makes it very easy. In my case, I was just doing a unit of 4 Night's Watch stalkers who are mounted like ranger types. There's 4 of them. And I also have 4, I think, Stark Outriders. These are both for the game, A Song of Ice and Fire miniature game. And this technique would also be pretty useful if you were doing, let's say, Lord of the Rings war game and you were going to do Rohan, for example, and you had a ton of horses to paint. What I like about using an airbrush to do the horses is that, you know, they're organic creatures that are very sleek. They're beautiful. They don't have a lot of, let's call it, sharp angles and sharp edges on them, right? So edge highlighting to me isn't the greatest when it comes to horses. I do it sometimes, but more and more I enjoy doing the airbrushing because it gives them the nice soft highlights that really most horses have when you look in photos, etc. And there's an added bonus. It makes it quite easy to do, like, the muzzle and the socks. I know I got to figure out the right terminology for those things, but it makes it really easy to do those as well. And again, very quickly. If this is your first time here at Mini Junkie and you're interested in the hobby of painting miniatures, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. All right, let's mount up. That was cheesy, sorry. All right, guys, here's a look at the horses we're going to be painting. I'm going to be focusing on painting brown horses as opposed to white or black in this video. Because of that, I'm going to start with an all-over base coat of Umbral Umber from P3, which is the same color I actually base my bases with before dry brushing them. But this is a really nice, rich, dark, reddish brown that's going to form a really good undercoat for all the different colors we're doing. I'm airbrushing quite close to the miniature, which allows me to avoid getting brown on the Night's Watch rider that I'd already painted. He's painted the same way I painted them in one of my other videos. So what I do is I pick almost any brown. In this case, I'm using P3 Bloodstone, which is mixed about 50-50 with airbrush medium. And what I do is I airbrush it just onto any of the bumps of the horse. It's kind of that simple. And by bumps, I mean any of the raised muscle areas. They get the most airbrushed amount of this initial color. And that includes up along the neck where the muscles are prominent. And don't forget the ears and most of the face. And like I said, starting from just about any brown you want, ideally I prefer a reddish brown. Then I add a couple drops of any type of like an ivory or a bone color, just not white, because that's going to be too stark. And that's going to lighten it up, and we're going to do and then I'm mixing it up in the cup with like my coffee stir stick. And same thing, I'm just airbrushing that lightly onto the raised bumps and muscles. And I also apply it to the knees, which I guess on a horse are like, you know, inverted or whatever, so the backs of the knees, and down around the bottom of the leg where it gets close to the hoof. I apply a little bit there, and it's really that simple. I'm just applying it and trying not to completely cover the previous step, so that's a very light touch with the airbrush in this case. The reason I don't mind doing this with the rider attached, I mean, he's molded right onto it, but it's because the rider is done with dry brushing and it's easy to fix. But as you get experience, you'll find this easier and easier to do. Then I do one more highlight, same thing. I'm starting with the mix I already have, and I'm adding a couple more drops, maybe 1, maybe 2, depending on how bright you want to make it, to that mix, mixing it in the cup, and same deal, I'm applying it to the bumps and raised muscles on the horse. I do, in this case, start to sort of focus a little more on the upper half of the horse, upper body, top of the, you know, the forehead or whatever, tops of the knees, and anywhere where it's really sticking out a lot, like it's a big bump or a fairly raised area, is where I'm going to focus this final highlight. And that's it for the body. It's really that easy. Now what I do is I take Vallejo black ink and I'm going to airbrush that very lightly on the bottom half of the leg. And you can vary how high up the leg you go, or if you do this at all, or even doing it on the front part of his muzzle or the blaze across like the length of his head or whatever. What's nice is the black, because it's a bit translucent, the ink, it just helps it sort of blend in with the overall look of the horse, as opposed to being a very opaque black that would just look a little too harsh. And I'm going to leave some of the footage up of applying this so you can see where and how I'm applying it and listen to the wonderful background music. But let's also talk about fixes. So this horse turned out too pink. Like, I don't know. I didn't start with a good brown and it ended up looking pinkish. So what I did is I took Vallejo Game Ink Brown, which again, it's fairly transparent, and just airbrushed it, one thin coat all over the pink area of the horse that I'd already done. And that enriched it, turned it into more of a reddish brown color, which I was happy with. Now another fix you may want to do is you may end up with not quite enough contrast and not enough definition between the muscles. Maybe your airbrush was bleeding over onto the shaded parts a little too much. And then we just grab our trusty Agrax Earthshade, wash it all over, one coat right out of the bottle. That's going to help bring back definition to the muscles and create a little more distinct areas of them. Now these are fixes you would do before airbrushing on the stockings using the ink. Now originally I wasn't really going to talk about doing the manes and tails, because it's the tricky part I was showing you was really about airbrushing the body. But for the manes and tails, take a brown that's a little bit darker or just slightly different shade than what you're using for the horse, because then we're going to come back and we're going to give that a wash to help darken it up and make it look appropriate for the tone of horse you have. So in this case I've used Mournfang Brown. On this one I'm using Rhinox Hide because it's still brown but it's fairly dark against this kind of chocolatey colored horse. For the formerly pink horse that's now brown, I use Doombull Brown. On the slightly lighter colored browns I use Agrax Earthshade and give it a wash. That's just going to create some definition in the hair. And for anywhere I want it to be even darker, I use a sepia Vallejo Game Ink wash, or I guess it's kind of a glaze, and that's going to create even a darker color and a little bit more definition in the hair. And you're going to let all that dry, and you're going to use a matte varnish on the horse, and that's going to be it. The only thing I'll add is paint the reins in a color that contrasts with the horse so that they stand out. And here's the final result, a unit of horses that look very natural. It looks like a very cohesive unit while still having variety in the types of browns the horses are. And you could also apply this to white horses and black horses. With white, you would start with a darker color and build up to white, and with black you could add things like Stegodon Scale Green to the mix to create highlights. That's it for now. Hope you enjoyed this and found it useful. Don't be scared to airbrush. Consider sharing, liking, and subscribing. Have a great holiday if I release this before Christmas. I think I will. And we'll see you next time.